black, me no brown, me no white. Nasty Babylon stripe, you mad? Yeah man. Don't try to resist this metamorphosis. Right yourself with Iman Blak. Listen to Iman. Step aside, Slassia.
This is Marogini. Salut, messieurs, mesdames. Vous êtes en train d'écouter Metamorphosis avec Dr. Iman Blak.
People moving out, people moving in. Why? Because of the color of the skin. Run, 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 but you sure can't hide. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Vote for me and I'll set you free. Rap on, brother, rap on. Well, the only person talking about love now, brother, is the preacher.
From a cuckoo to a butterfly, metamorphosis.
There is a light far, far away, where there's no light.
Of the world into one vast organization to plant the banner of freedom on the great continent of Africa. If Europe is for Europeans, then Africa is for the black people of the world. Men and women as black as I am, and even more so, had believed themselves white under West Indian order of society. I was simply an impossible man to use openly the term Negro, yet everyone beneath its breath was calling the black man a nigger. I had to decide whether to please my friends and be one of the black whites of Jamaica and be reasonably prosperous, or come out openly and help improve and protect the integrity of the black millions and suffer. I decided to do the latter. There is no future for a people who deny their past. My foreparents, my grandparents, my mother and father did not suffer and die to give me an education to oppress, slight, or discourage my people. Whatsoever education I acquired out of their sacrifice of over 300 years, I shall use for the salvation of the 400 million Negroes of the world. And the day when I forsake my people, may God Almighty say there shall be no more life for you. I unequivocally rejected the racist assumptions of much white American Christianity, namely that God had created the black man inferior and that he had intended Negroes to be a servant class. He was a wooden drawers of water. I predicated my view of man and the doctrine of Imago Dei. All men regarded were created in the image of God.
So many things that's held us down, but now it looks like things are finally coming around. I know we've got a long, long way to go, and where we'll end up, I don't know. But we won't let nothing hold us back. We're putting ourselves together, we're polishing up our act. If you've ever been held down before, I know you refuse to be held down anymore. Stand in your way. I won't try to listen to every word I say, every word I say. Ain't no stopping us now. We're on. Ain't no stopping us
caterpillar. From a caterpillar to a butterfly. The metamorphosis is here. It's live. Metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis, word, sound and power, music, drumming, current affairs, everything to grow and lift up your mind. Metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis, creating beauty and stimulating change from a constant supply of relevant knowledge and information.
We've been trying on your mind, much too long.
No more youths and youths for sale. We get wise and don't decide to change their style. Bobby wrong, keep your empty promises and your crooked smile. Metamorphosis, come with your thoughts. Change your way of thinking. Metamorphosis, the change begins with you.
Black men apartheid, black men of Ethiopia, Timbuktu, Alexandria gave the light of civilization to this world. Ethiopia shall stretch forth our hands unto God, and princes shall come out of Egypt.
I, son of the Most High, Jah Rastafari.
Keep listening.
Hey, oh Africa. From Babylon, now take no chat from Babylon. Cause a you corrupt, the ghetto youth, we don't know wicked act, we know Babylon. When me walk, I trample down Babylon. Talk and ride down Babylon. Who know always they are with your clans and plans. Won't come trapping the man. Who no think, who no can come take Mama Africa from we again. No, who no can come take Mama Africa from we again. Who no think, who no can come take Mama Africa from we again. No, who no can come take Mama Africa from we again. True religion, you bomb down a Lebanon. Lick yourself and a blame Afghanistan. We do no tricks and cans, implement a plan. Then you go dig down Saddam. We see you a draw nearer and nearer. But the Isle mama got now go share ya. Oh, me nah get scared. We defend the square. Oh, Pasha Shama Langale. You no can come take Mama Africa from we again. Who no think who no can come take Mama Africa from we again. No, who no can come take Mama Africa from we again. Who no think who no can come take Mama Africa from we again.
Again. Yes, highly. Ah, boy, you never want me forever burning. Can you see when the tables turn? Me say I love her, I and I preaching. So every land of hate will burn. I was there when the ships came and chastised I in a Jesus' name. Wonder if me crazy, wonder if me sane. But the whole of Rome I go up in a flame. I know nothing for me walk in a room and start a fire. And I know nothing for me walk in a room and start a fire. God, them I wonder how a little African I go burn down the whole in a Vatican. But I know nothing for me walk in a room. Start a fire. We a go home. The whole demographic philosophy. And when me talk, I mean no hypocritic. When you say Rome, I eat no geography. But if I you feel wear the cap, then I you is a fit. When me say Rome, me a talk about lion. I will Selassie, I the power of the triad. The eagle and the dragon and the bear a spit fire, but them can't overthrow the conquering lion. Say now, listen to the voice of the people. Today Rome will burn, and not me alone as a over evil. Say today Rome will burn. No nothing for me walk in a Rome and start a fire, start a fire. Yes. No nothing for me walk in a Rome and start a fire. Me say a fire because them.
Don't keep shying attention to this land. We wise and human stand sipping from the cupful cup of peace. Not one shall hit, not one. Don't keep shying attention. These are all along. We wise and a true man stand sipping from the cup of peace. You chant down on Babylon. You chant down on Babylon. You chant down on Babylon. Chant down on Babylon. Give thanks and praise. Give thanks and praise. Give thanks and praise. You give thanks and praise to the whole man of creation. Chant down on Babylon. Chant down on Babylon. You chant down on Babylon. Chant down on Babylon. Give thanks and praise. Give thanks and praise.
Tinastilin, Tata Masagana, Akwaba. Peace, prosperity, all ones and ones listening to the Metamorphosis. Give thanks for another opportunity to link with the eyes out there in Radio Land. Give thanks for ones and ones who have their devices and are not connected to Styles FM. This is the Metamorphosis. I am your host. I'm Dr. Iman Blak. About to take you through some paces and some changes and to look at some situations from some varied perspectives. At this moment, the world is on a pause. And within the pause, Iman will use the opportunity to speak to the great event that is actually taking place. The greatest show on earth. And what does it mean to black people? What does it mean to Rastafari? What is so great about this show? Why is it the greatest show on earth and the entire planet? Running over 1 month. The show is now at a pause because the pretenders for the throne are all gone. What we have left now are the real contenders. We have 16 nations battling, engaged in a war. So the Metamorphosis is going to explore the nature of this war. What is the foundation of this World Cup? Who is FIFA? What is FIFA? What are the powers of this organization with a global reach? What is the power behind this government of the greatest order? How does this government influence affairs? Is the FIFA World Cup a battle between races and nations? What is the nature of this war? And what is the ultimate prize? So I have been purposely avoiding making any sort of input towards this world war. But because we're on the pause, and I was always waiting for the real 16 teams to surface, we are now at 16. And this is the original format of the World Cup. 16 teams. So we're going to just explore a little bit about the nature of this cup. Why the whole world has been fixated and galvanized and almost at a level of paranoia. Well, not even paranoia. I can't find the word about excitement. But everybody's highly enthused about this World Cup. And there are certain elements that must come to the front for us to examine. Of course, locally, we could always ask the question, you know, why are we not there? But that will not be resolved in this reasoning. We want to look at how the whole thing is set up. How did black people get involved in this World Cup? Who are the owners of the cup? Yeah, what defines whether a nation wins this cup or not? There are some certain things that must begin to come to mind. Who really makes all of the money out of this greatest show on earth? And at the end of the show, are black people any more advanced in their social, economic, or political status globally? Recalling that the last World Cup was in South Africa. So this World Cup, this FIFA World Cup, that is now at the center of everybody's attention, mainly people who are interested in international play, because there are some countries who are still resisting the power of football. So the Metamorphosis, we're going to look into the genesis of this organization called FIFA. Why does FIFA operate as an autonomous government? Where does this government get its powers? And who is FIFA responsible to? And ultimately, we want to know if there's a role that God plays in FIFA's world. Does God or Jesus have any influence on the results of these games in FIFA's World Cup? Yeah, we want to know that because all those who are believers must be having their beliefs as they watch the World Cup. So we're questioning our religion and sport. Do these things conflict each other? Or does God step aside and let the teams play? And where is Satan in the mix of things? Is it that Satan is just observing, not participating? Yes, the globe is connected to play. And we're going to explore the nature of play. We're going to look into the evolution of play into games. And then look into how games have become sport. What is it now that this World Cup represents to African people, to Europeans, to Asians, the people of the world? Is it really a war about the races? Is it a war about the nations? And is it a war that is being fought simply over a ball? Metamorphosis. We're going to explore this world of FIFA.
this big plantation, fussing and fighting among ourselves. Nothing to achieve this way. It's worse than the last day. Get up and fight for your rights, my brother. Get up and fight for your rights, my sister. Took us away from civilization, brought us just live in this big plantation, fussing and fighting among ourselves. Nothing to achieve this way. It's worse than the last day.
So the journey continues, and we're going to look at this within the context of African history. We're going to look at the World Cup within the context of the African story. Yes, within our story, within our culture, within our history. How does the World Cup fit into the culture and the history of African people? And we have to recognize now that this competition was established by Europeans. 6 European nations came together to organize themselves into a body, a group of countries that will govern a certain aspect of behavior. We're going to call this aspect of behavior play. So this thing formulated in Europe, this organization that would call itself FIFA. It was formulated in 1904. In a brief, it's really an international federation of what we're going to call football associations. It's an international federation of football associations. In other words, all nations that play football must have a football association, a governing body in each country. It's called an FA. And so there's an international federation of these FAs. And it's going to be governed by some countries setting up themselves in Europe. So we have 1904 as a date for the organization of FIFA. But as African people now, to contextualize FIFA's formation, we have to sort of identify the African journey. Where are the African people at the 1900s? And even better than that now, we also have to continue to trace Europe as we go backward in time in the 1800s. So we want to use the period of the 1800s to explore the connections between the formation and the founding of FIFA and the World Cup and black people and our journey out of slavery. So the 1800s is a period that the historians would want to call the period of decolonization. Because for the previous 400 years, African race was enslaved. So we know about the brutality and the uprooting and the violence that has been meted out to black people from the 1200s, right, straight up to the 1800s. So there's 400 or 500 years of oppression black people under, losing culture, losing identity, losing everything that was sensible. And within that progression of the Europe, the European would be building up his society, building up his cities, building up his culture, and the devastation of Africans. So we have to recognize now that this organization of play that's going to take place in the 1800s is happening in Europe, but within the African tradition, we are still experiencing torture. We're still experiencing enslavement. We're still experiencing brutality. So the black people generally coming through the 1800s had no time to play. Play was never a feature of black man life. Black man life was all about enslavement and labor. So we have to keep the thing within the context now. It's two things developing. simultaneously. We're looking at Europe, and now they're going to move into organizing their football. And we're looking at the African people trying to wiggle them way out of chattel slavery. So the 1800s is a very important period to begin to get a grasp of what this World Cup is about. Now in the 1800s now, we also must bear in mind that the British who came to Jamaica in the 1600s and the Spanish came into the 1400s. So these elements have been here and they have been strong in the Caribbean. As we come into the middle of the 1800s, but before we even get to the middle, let us bear in mind that in 1804, in Haiti, we have a black nation declaring its independence and declaring that all black people were free. This is in the midst of the enslavement. So within the Caribbean region, there's one nation, a black nation, that has stood out to fight against European colonization. It was the Haitians. So this is an important point that we should never forget. It was by the middle of the 1830s, for example, in Jamaica, the Jamaican people were introduced to this idea of emancipation in the 1830s. 1860s, the United States. So right through the 1800s, there was this process called decolonization, where the Africans were being released from chattel slavery into a different form of slavery. The European, in the meantime, is building his societies in the same 1800s. His history was one of war, because the Europeans came out of a tribal culture, and they've always been accustomed to war. One of the methods of resolving war is really through creation of sport, because sport is really a more organized, glorified way of exercising war. And that is the tradition, because it is known that sport actually evolved out of war. So we're seeing a culture. We're seeing a culture that is driven by competition, driven by war. And so as it becomes organized, it also organizes behavior and it channels a lot of its energy now, rather than into physical attacks upon each other, they were channeled into sports. And so sports became a sort of outlet for violence and for competition and for organized play. This is what the Europeans organized. So this nature to fight and to be competitive was easily channeled into organized sport. And this became a major activity on the continent of Europe. You see, play is an important aspect of the human being. We all have to play. Just that we need some understanding as to how to play evolve into games, and ultimately who controlled the games. Metamorphosis.
Emmanuel, you go charge them to when them take it from Africa, we never have no criminal record. I know they take it go and break. Starting why Marcus gave you a profit first, man, then they put. If you have a clean record, passport or visa, you can't pass them port. Pass them port. So we don't come here for no visa and no passport. We don't come here for no visa and no passport. We all we come down here for the same boat. We all we come down here for the same boat. We don't come here for no visa and no passport. We don't come here for no visa and no passport. All Google have to run like a same boat. We all we come down here for the same boat. The police and soldier, all the commissioner, the nurse and doctor, the judge and lawyer, also the governor general and prime minister. The whole of we come down here for the same boat. Rise up, oh we mighty ways. Rise and take your stand again. My people still continue through the game. Babylon, them man use them brain. Don't dangerous people, we are not free. Living in this outdoor captivity. My people still living in poverty. Fear of safety can't be free. Don't come here for no visa and no passport. Don't come here for no visa and no passport. Ebola we come down here on the same boat. Ebola we come down here on the same boat. We don't come here for no visa and no passport. We don't come here for no visa and no passport. But like a Safa plate on the same boat. Ebola we come down here on the same boat. So get it for England, so get it for America, so get it for Canada, so get it for Jamaica. 450 years of slavery round here. Africa away it is created. Don't come here for no visa and no passport. Don't come here for no visa and no passport. Ebola we come down here on the same boat. Ebola we come down here on the same boat. We don't come here for no visa and no passport. We don't come here for no visa and no passport. For global affairs like a steamboat. Ebola we come down here on the same boat. Take it from me yard. We never have no criminal record. But when they take it from me yard, never have no criminal record. No.
Yeah, Metamorphosis. Setting up foreground, or rather setting a background to this greatest show on earth called the World Cup. A lot of people are watching it, a lot of people who are even youthful. Some people born from 1990 onwards in the internet age. Don't know much before what was happening in the world 1980, 1970, 1960 onward. So just trying to create a framework, because this program will be continuous right through until we get to the final in another 2 weeks. So this process now, this decolonization that the Europeans try to conduct on Panay, setting us free from the chattels, also made us as a people have to turn to our own culture for our salvation. Because emancipation didn't mean equal opportunity in economics, nor politics, nor education. It meant the African had to turn to himself, within self. And inside self is culture, and cultural talents abound. One of the deepest cultural expressions within I is really through our play. We must realize now that play is not an idle activity now, you know. Play is a sort of fundamental drive that exists in all beings, all living beings. It's a difficult concept to define. I'm going to say a little bit about play. And I'm reading out of my own publication called Thought Soccer Towards Thinking Feet. These are aspects of my doctoral work. Play is a difficult concept to define. It appears to be one of those activities of nature that is obvious at the conscious level. It is something that causes it as an activity that is occurring even amongst the animals, because the animals play, birds play, and to the extent that play is so vital to our consciousness and development. You know, you can play with a dog, you can put a hand in a dog's mouth, and the dog can just nibble on it and not bite you. But at the same time, if the dog is angry and you put your hand in his mouth, he won't bite you. So there is a distinction now between fun play and serious play. And that's an important thing for I and I to grasp. That play is vital, because play allows you to relax, allows you to enjoy yourself. It allows you to be at ease within. But there's an aspect of play that is serious. And it is this serious aspect of play that the Europeans transformed into business. This seriousness about play that moves play from recreation into professional activity. So the Europeans now would move toward developing professional playing within their societies. And the professional player was not looked down on because he was not bright. The professional player was respected because he was a professional. And so play began to develop as an industry in Europe. And the movement of play to sport is not so automatic, because we have to recognize that play is something that is sort of liberal. You can play by yourself. You don't need any rules when you play by yourself. There are solitary games. You can play all crossword puzzle. So there are individual games and there are group games. That is the nature of games. And your play becomes a game once you begin to introduce rules. So we can move from loose play, recreational play, into organized play. Once the play becomes organized now, we talk about games. And it becomes organized because there are rules. And ultimately, somebody must set the rules. So there's an authority figure. There's an issue of power now when we talk about games. Who has the power over the game? And in the context of our investigation now, the power rests in a group called FIFA. It is FIFA that has power over the game of football. They have ultimate power, they have absolute power. And FIFA's power is unchallengeable. That the god of FIFA really is the referee. Within the world of FIFA, God Almighty is the referee. Unchallengeable, unquestioned. So we see that there's a world called the world of FIFA. And we're going to explore how does it connect to I in this time. Because while the world of FIFA was being organized, remember now, I have no concept about play. What I know is work and slavery. And our effort to dodge work. And our effort to avoid oppression. Made no room for play. So it was difficult for I to really transform ourselves necessarily into what we're going to call professional players. Because that's a very distant concept when you look at where I is coming from. In the 1800s, of course, we have to reflect again on the period of the whole thing starting up. In 1838, we know about our emancipation here in Jamaica. We also know that in 1885, the Europeans had a big conference, and that conference was to divide Africa. It was called the Berlin Conference in 1885. And this conference divided Africa, split it up between European powers, these same powers that organize the thing called FIFA. So we're looking at the same slave traders, slave owners, organizing themselves now to control a different resource. And this resource now will be contained within the people, within the African people, within the people of the world who enjoy play. Yes, so the power will be gone over into a different dimension. Culture, play and games, sport. We can look at what's happening off the pitch.
So rising higher, higher, there's nothing everywhere.
they can't stop. We stand up and salute now to the yellow, the green, the black. And make them know say that they want this Mexican.
The world is for your taking, and giving up is the only crime. Now written on the pages of history, this is your moment, this is your time. Now we know it's not an easy road.
Yeah, so this big ball now, international football, very, very serious activity, controlled by the European powers who organized this thing in 1904, this thing called FIFA. The countries were France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland. These are the founding members of this world governing body called FIFA. And this body, I must explain to the item now, in this present time, is the largest governing body in the world. There are more members in FIFA than there are at the United Nations. There are more members in FIFA than there are in the World Trade Organization. And there are more members in FIFA than the World Health Organization. FIFA is the biggest organization, the largest governing body, the biggest government on planet Earth, with a budget that can match, that is unmatched, and with powers that overpower national governments, with the power to interfere in identity issues, allowing individuals to transform their national identities. This is a mighty and a powerful organization, and it governs a very basic activity of man, which is man's love and ability to play. So we're looking at a system being set up in Europe. I want to realize now that the European tradition and culture about sport is coming out of the Greek tradition. So to understand Europe and its tradition in sports, you begin by exploring Greece. And at Greece you'll see the basis of the Olympic movement and the foundation of amateur sport in Europe. So this athletic prowess developed by the Greeks, this marathon and this Olympic tradition, helped to form Europe's first international sporting organization, and that is the IOC, the International Olympic Committee. And this is an organization that governs the Olympic movement. And all countries who are part of the Olympic movement must bow to the IOC, formed in around 1860 something, 60 a little bit. But athletics is not a grassroots activity. Athletics is a more individual effort, and it doesn't really have a large mass appeal. So when the FIFA was formed in 1904, this organization now had a different power, a greater grip on the world, because more countries in the world play football, if not all countries. So soccer now is an international sport. Football is an international game. It doesn't require much equipment, and oftentimes it can be played in any type of space. And it is a poor man game. It was considered a hooligan game in Europe, in England, while cricket was considered the game of the elites. So where we are set up now is that black man tradition within the world of international football was way behind because of our enslavement, where we try to compare the levels of the European play. Africa, for example, has felt the rot because continent and its size, despite the size of the continent, in the early stage of the World Cup was only offered one space. One space. At the time, FIFA's World Cup was 16. So, we have to recognize now that this thing called the World Cup is a highly organized activity generated by the world's largest government, FIFA. The first World Cup, of course, was held in Uruguay, South America. It was won by the Uruguayans. They were the previous Olympic champions. And they seemed to carry their form into the first World Cup. The second World Cup was played in Italy. The Uruguayans didn't show. And Italians took it home. It started a tradition where Europe and South America would become the giants. And these would be the the perennial contenders for the World Cup. It was usually a battle between Europe and South America. That has not changed much in 2014. The battle continues between the two supercontinents. When we come to football, the black man role has changed significantly over the last 10-20 years within his input into the world football, particularly at the performance level. But we want to look at it a little deeper now. Because I want to look at the ownership, I want to look at the money, I want to look at who really benefits from the World Cup, and is it that the enslavement process has simply moved away from agricultural products to sports. Metamorphosis.
No matter when you do, you know, say that we can't stop. We stand up and salute down to the yellow, the green, the black. And make them know, say that we want this mystic. The world is for your taking, and giving up is the only crime. Now written on the pages of history, this is your moment, this is your time. Now we know it's not an easy road. Tree on top, another road. Hold on, we gotta carry the load.
Yeah, this fantastic thing called the World Cup. We have to recognize that black people and African people weren't there in the beginning. We were not even participants in the process, much less performers. This is a European invention, a way to settle their tribal war differences. It's a war on the pitch. It's really war. And you look into the crowd, you see and you hear the singing of the tribal groups. You hear it in the English Premier League, you hear it right across the European leagues. It's a serious venting of anger and frustration. So this war that the Europeans have developed now around this football is something that was not easy to digest, I think, in this Western hemisphere for black people. Because playing seriously is not a simple task. You have to play seriously. And if you're in a culture where play is recognized as recreational, then the difficulty increases. It becomes a psychological thing where the society doesn't value play. The society values work. At the same time, now we see in Europe where play becomes work. So there's a professional side to play. In the colonized societies like the Caribbean and Jamaica and those places, this is a great difficulty. In Africa, in the Caribbean, where play is not viewed as a professional activity. It is viewed as idleness. Yet we see in Europe, once you put an economic philosophy around play, then you talk about big business and big sport. So if I look at the World Cup thing now and try to recognize, are we, meaning I and I, the black people, are we really benefiting from these financial outlays? And is FIFA a government unto itself? We see right now Brazilian society is in an uproar because of the lack of attention being paid by the government. At the same time, the government has to facilitate FIFA. What then is this thing called FIFA? Seems to be a mighty, mighty monster.
Put your flags up in the sky. Check it out the wall. And we're gonna stand. Show the world.
Now this World Cup is FIFA's showcase. It is where FIFA makes its biggest money. Every 4 years, they go through this cleanup process. Of course, we say in 1930 Uruguay were the first winners. In 1934 it was Italy. In 1938 again, Italy repeated. The next 2 years were the war years, where the Europeans had their exorcism and they waged war against each other. So in 1942 there was no World Cup, and in 1946 there was no World Cup. The World Cup returned in 1950, and in 1950 the Brazilians won the World Cup for the first time. In 1954 it was an opportunity for the West Germans to win their first World Cup. In 1958, the Brazilians returned to the championship. And in 1962, which is the year of Jamaica's independence, the Brazilians also won the World Cup. So at the time that Jamaica would become independent, the Jamaican people would have been highly attracted to the Brazilian football. The Caribbean people were fascinated with the Brazilian style, and the black people were idolizing the new king called Pele. So there's motivation for black people to sort of get involved in this game called football, because out of South America, we saw flashes of blackness on international football. Of course, we must not forget that Brazil was the home to the greater proportion of Africans who were taken out of Africa. The greatest proportion of Africans were taken into Brazil during the enslavement process. So the Africanness in Brazil cannot be eliminated. And it's when that Africanness in Brazilian football comes to the top that the Brazilian ball play the best. Brazil also is a very racist society. Seriously racist. But their football is international and supreme. So the world will overlook Brazil's racism as they adore the style of Brazilian play. So Brazil becomes a point of reference for African people, for black people globally. A point wherein ambition now begin to develop in the black man to play this game. Remember, realizing now that this is coming up out of slavery. This is from 1904 right to the 1950s Brazilian surface. 1962, Jamaica becomes independent. We establish the JFF, and for the first time, this island set its ambition on trying to qualify for this world's greatest stage show. So the World Cup has been around. It's a European event. It's a South American event. It's an event that has been controlled by Europeans in terms of organization, in terms of organizing the rules. So up to 1970, the Brazilian football was the talk of the year, talk of the town. Africans had not yet shown any great signs of anything. Neither did people in the Caribbean. But there's a waking up. There's a waking up to the awareness of this thing called the World Cup. And there's going to be some serious changes now when the president of the FIFA would become a Brazilian. And in 1974, FIFA had a new president by the name of Havilange. And Havilange would bring a revolution to international football. Metamorphosis.
This is Styles FM.
Here's to the DJ still letting you all know that the artist rhythm now, the General Science is now available on iTunes and Amazon for sale. Get your copy now or just log on to www.stylesfm.com. Click on the General Science banner, it will take you straight to iTunes where you can make your purchase, alright? Loud.
One voice, you know, Lodi. Yo, Lawless Event present the biggest water party in Portland. Marco Polo at Sunshine Beach on Saturday 28th of June. Featuring me, One Voice. I did down here. Yo, Lawless, tell them, say, down there. Admission hour, 1,000 pre-stool, 1,500 at the gate. Ladies 2-4 at the gate before 6 p.m. Gate open 4 p.m. All drinks free. Music by Germity, Mookie, Crown Prince, Bigger 5, and Flubber Lover. Sponsored by Classic Cola, Digital Fruit, a Cool Running, Grand Water, and Style FM. I'm on this thing, Portland. Yo, take with them, y'all. Marco Polo, go take with them, y'all. Take with them, y'all. Down there. One.
With Styles FM on the go, you can listen to your favorite programs by calling the USA number 213-992-4360. If you're in the UK, is 033-0010-3322.
Planning a party, club night out, stage show, a gospel concert, or even a business sales event? Let Styles FM be a part of your promoting tool. Take advantage of our low-priced promotion packages with commercials, interviews, giveaways, reviews, and much more. We have special offers when you mix and match and bundle your options. Contact us at 876-286-9216 or 439-5160. Styles FM for the most effective way to exploit your marketing dollar.
Styles FM, you're my number one.
So they want time to change my identity. Musically. So they want time to change my identity. Musically. Some music race, commercial race, political race. Some music race, commercial race, political race. So they want I to change my identity. Musically. So they want time to change my identity. Musically. My identity. Your work must be done.
Metamorphosis, continuing to look at this war that the world is in a pause now. And by tomorrow, all soldiers are back in the battlefield again. This is a war over a ball. This is a war for supremacy. This is a war between nations. It's a war between races. Serious war. $1 billion expenditure. The greatest money-making event on the planet every 4 years. It wasn't like that in the origins because there was not much injection of money. The money really was introduced in the 1970s with the new FIFA president called Joao Havelange, 1974. Havelange brought multinational companies within the family of FIFA for commercial ventures. Coca-Cola, Gillette. Large companies began to invest in FIFA and the world football. Television rights stepped up, commercials, advertisement, manufacturers, all were brought into the mix. And FIFA became a great money maker, led by the Brazilian. Now we have to understand now that the World Cup itself is really a battle over rights to claim supremacy in organization, in discipline, in structure, in resilience. It shows a nation being tested in a high-speed environment, great pressure. Results are important, and much gambling and money online. High-intensity activity. The African nations and the Caribbean states who have just been given this modicum of independence, this independence thing that started in the 50s. Most of these nations began to join FIFA with their independence. But joining FIFA simply meant you're a member of the governing body of world football, but certainly far from being able to compete with the teams of Europe and South America. So in 1962, Jamaica, for example, we changed from the JFA to JFF, and we declared ourselves eligible and tried to enter our first World Cup, which would be 1966. You know, we also employed a Brazilian coach because we were intoxicated with Brazilian football. Penna came and Penna left. We have to also bear in mind that that same great nation called Haiti, the same nation that led itself to independence and were able to resist all white forces, that same nation were able to put together a football program that would qualify Haiti for the World Cup in 1974. So the Haitians have always had this great capacity to organize and to fight and to defend and to be united culturally. So they were there in 1974 in West Germany. They actually led Italy 1-0 for a good time before they were overpowered by the Italians. So the World Cup has been a very, very difficult task for teams outside of Europe and outside of South America for a very long time. So the 1960s would show that Jamaica would enter, but we must also bear in mind that our culture, the Caribbean culture, the former slave cultures, were primarily amateur. There was no professionalism that was passed on to the African population. So our play would never be professional. Our play was always amateur, recreational play. And a recreational soldier will never beat a full-time soldier. No day of the week. Well, maybe once out of every year, but never on a consistent basis. So the World Cup has become a dream, more or less, for island states and for much of the African nations, right up to 1974. Because in 1974 now, African countries began to shake up, began to take the football a little bit more organized in the 70s. And we would see some changes in the World Cup organization. Because what Havilange did was expand the FIFA. He expanded FIFA from 16 teams to 24 teams. This was part of his re-election campaign, his attempt to bring more third world nations into the world football, and it worked. The FIFA family expanded. Africa had a representation. The Caribbean had another one. And so the world football grew. And the World Cup became a bigger thing in the 1970s. So 74 is an important turning point for FIFA. FIFA goes into big business. It is also the beginning of the Brazilian decline. Because in 1970, Brazil won its third. Brazil retired the World Cup in 1970. The Jules Rimet Trophy. But since 1970, the Brazilians were in the wilderness. So for 24 years, from 1970 to 1994, Brazil would not see the World Cup again. For 24 years. So the World Cup would be contested. There would be new champions. And FIFA would expand itself to bring in countries in Asia, Africa, the Caribbean, And FIFA now will organize itself to really beat the world governing body. And all of this will be operating out of Europe. So we need to look a bit closer now at the structure of FIFA. How does FIFA govern the world with over 200 nations? Fantastic.
Emmanuel, you go charge them to when them take it from Africa, we never have no criminal record. I know they take it go and break. Standing wide, Marcus Gavin, what profit first, man, them they put. If you have a clean record, passport and visa, you can't pass them port. Pass them port. So we don't come here for no visa and no passport. We don't come here for no visa and no passport. The whole of we come down here for the same boat. The whole of we come down here for the same boat. We don't come here for no visa and no passport. We don't come here for no visa and no passport. All Google have to run like a same boat. The whole of we come down here for the same boat. The police and soldier, all the commissioner, the nurse and doctor, the judge and lawyer, also the governor general and prime minister. The whole of we come down here for the same boat. Rise up, oh we mighty ways. Rise and take a stand again. My people still continue through the game. Babylon, them and use them brain. No change on our feet, but we are not free. Living in this outdoor captivity. My people still living in poverty. Fear of safety can't be free. Don't come here for no visa and no passport. Don't come here for no visa and no passport.
Yeah, we're exploring this World Cup and black people's involvement in it. How we got into it late, and all of a sudden now we are such important performers. But being performers don't make you owners of the product, and you have to recognize that you can be a performer and still be a slave. So we're looking at the biggest picture, the movement of goods and services. No longer sugarcane, no longer banana. Appears to be sportsmen. Seem to be the new product on the international market. The dependency growing forever on Africa again. What has changed? So we say this mighty World Cup, which is a battle between nations, races. Turning point for FIFA, its governing body, 1974, bringing in of a Brazilian president. And Haviland would transform the entire world and expand his government. Yeah, his government, because FIFA has a president, it has elections, it has officers, it has laws, it has its statutes, it has its own disciplinary committee. It's a government unto itself. Yeah, man, unquestionable. And it can put pressure on national governments to carry out its mandates. It distributes millions of dollars globally at the end of each World Cup. So it's a highly organized, controlling power body called a government, but its realm is in sport. It's neither political nor civil by itself, but it is in the realm of sport, which seems to permeate both civil and political society. The realm of sport, the sports world. So in the 70s, important transition, where money now will be introduced into football at the highest level. Advertisements and commercials and marketing will become a key tool for the promotion of this game. The Brazilians, as I said earlier, fell off the chart in terms of being champions. Always contending. 1974 was the introduction of the Dutch style of football. The Dutch and the Germans dominated the 70s along with the Argentinians. The birth of Maradona. So the World Cup must always have a star. That's what it's all about. So Maradona became the new star, replacing Pele. In present-day dispensation now, this World Cup is still searching for a star. All eyes are on Lionel Messi, and is hoping that he will deliver. So this is a great stage show. It's the greatest show on the earth. It is run by European powers. Officials are the almighty. They are unquestionable. Where then does the spiritual divine God play a role? I'm saying Does God care about who wins or loses? Because we see games in the first couple of games where it was interference by the referees that take away victories from certain teams. So where is the role of God and prayer? What happens when both teams go to pray and the referee interferes and make one team lose? What does God have to say about that? Does that make Satan laugh? We have to question our belief systems once we get involved in the world of sports. Because prayer and good luck, all these things are called upon in the world of sport. But we also have robbery. And we have violence. Where is the almighty powers within this realm? Or does God absent himself from the world of sport? We're asking these things because we have been told that God sees and knows all things. So Suarez put on a bite from Cellini. Somebody didn't know before. Algeria qualify. All praises to Allah. How the thing go? Metamorphosis. Of course, this World Cup, which has been a battle between Europe and South America, eventually, you know, people of the Black continent would begin to pay attention to this cup, and efforts will be made to secure the monies and the fame that would come with these winnings. As Black people now, sometimes we don't even understand when and how did we enter this struggle for the cup. But if we look into our African tradition, we realize that the second World Cup, which was held in 1934, there was an African country that participated in that World Cup, 1934. How many of you can figure out which country played in the qualifying rounds for the World Cup? 1934, an African country. That country also made an effort to qualify in 1990. So we're talking about Egypt. We're talking about Egypt. And oftentimes when we talk about African football, the Europeans don't have us recognize Egypt as Africa. They have the impression that Egypt is a part of Europe. So the Egyptian football, as a matter of fact, they call themselves the Pharaohs, you know. The Egyptian national team is called the Pharaohs. And we know that the Pharaohs are the God King. So it's a culture being manifested out of the African people. And the Pharaohs qualified in the 1934 tournament. So Africa now is not just what they're going to call below the Sahara. Because the Europeans have a way to divide and conquer, you know. And geographically, they have divided Africa into above and below the Sahara. The countries like Algeria, which is presently in the round of 16, enough people don't see them as African. Because the media give you the impression that they are not African, that they are North African. They're not Africans, they're not Black people, they are North Africans. So we have this problem in perception of our own African identity. So Egypt, 1934, they were there at the World Cup. In the modern World Cup now, 1974, Zaire made an appearance. And Zaire stained the consciousness of I because they pick up something like a 9-love from Scotland. Yeah, man, and had the whole world describing how African football was naive and the man them this and the man them can't do that, and all sort of criticism started about African football. But if you notice what has happened from 1974 till now, up to the 1990s, there was a massive movement in the football talent in Africa. A lot of it had to do with the Europeans now investing in African talent, seeking young African players to bring them into the European club system. And a new type of trade developed, a trade for African talent. So there's a certain amount of leakage now that started out of Africa. Young talent being siphoned off into European clubs, second and third division, to be rebranded and sold to first division teams at high monies. Another form of economic exploitation to the realm of sports. And because we're pursuing the big ball for entertainment, we're not looking at the other sides of sport. There are some theorists who call themselves conflict theorists. They are in strong opinion and a strong voice that sport is not really simply something used to upgrade and uplift people. They are of the view that sports is really a tool that is used by the wealthy to control the oppressed, to control the will, the revolutionary will of the poor people. Perspectives, Metamorphosis, SADS FM.
sweet when you ain't got plenty. Don't drown yourself, don't drown yourself in too much honey. You wake up early every morning, worrying about your earthly possessions, yeah. Don't make it holy, don't make it holy in these obsessions. I see your glory in the morning sun. I see your glory when the day is
Yes, we continue to explore and examine this thing called the World Cup, the world's greatest show. Every 4 years, been running from 1930. Very consistent, absent twice because of 2 European wars. But it's a very powerful force, this thing called football. And its governing body, the governors of this, are the most powerful men on the planet. Nations have stopped fighting war, just for a football match to play. That is the power of football. They are a great contributor to world peace, as well as a great divider in creating opposition and war. So this war that is being fought now for the World Championship, it began with 32 teams. Now it's down to 16. The Brazilians, of course, as a home team, are favored. And the tradition is that the continent that hosts the World Cup usually provides the winner. This, of course, was the general idea when the World Cup just started. That was, however, blown away by the Brazilians themselves, because the Brazilians won the World Cup when it was being played in Sweden. So that sort of blew away the mythology that it is a home continent that will win the World Cup. I'm saying that to say that in 2014, let's not rule out the potential of a certain European country to win this World Cup in South America. It's not impractical. It's part of the history of the Cup. So I'm saying no, in 1970 the great Brazilians won the Cup for the last time, for a very long time. And in 1974, Cup was played for in West Germany. The Germans overpowered the Dutch. In 1978, Cup moved to Argentina. The Argentinians overpowered the Dutch. So the Dutch have always been a powerhouse at the World Cup finals. They have yet to win the Cup, but they have been to about 3 finals. That is outstanding. And they are probably overdue based upon their own efforts this time around. In 1982, the World Cup moved to Italy. And of course, the Brazilians had one of the best teams that didn't win the World Cup in that year. The Italians began to show their character in 1982. In 1986 now, something interesting happened. Because the world was introduced now fully to Diego Maradona, who would replace King Pelé as the stellar player on the world stage. He will become the marquee player for FIFA. Maradona committed one of the most infamous acts in football. And this act was called the Hand of God. And lately I've been asking now if God is a cheat. Because that hand of God cheated England out of a game situation and provided victory to the Argentinians. If that is the hand of God, then we must think very carefully about how God works within the world of FIFA. Because it was allowed. It was allowed. And Argentina went on to win the World Cup in 1986. And I'm wondering now, how is that justified within the sight of God? The same Christian God who we go to for justice and mercy. The Christian God oversees Maradona, hand of God. And that God, hand of God, brings Argentina to the World Cup. And the money. And the fame. Questions. Morality. And football. Do they really mix? Metamorphosis, Alkebulan, Kemet, our story, African people story as it relates to this World Cup. What is our story? Why has the World Cup championship not reached Africa at this moment? Why hasn't an African team to this point qualified for even the semi-finals of this World Cup yet? A lot of people have been casting a lot of aspersions on Africa and its footballers. A lot of negative criticism about style of play and attitude and bad-mindedness and all sort of comments I've been listening to. A lot of these comments are not grounded in knowledge of international football and the history of the World Cup. What is this battle all about? How much money is invested in this particular attempt by nations? So I mentioned earlier that it was really Egypt, which is one of the industrialized aspects of Africa, nation-wise. Egypt entered the World Cup in 1934 into the first round. But the modern day African presence really started in the 70s, motivated by the expansion that was led by Havilland. But by the 1990s, throughout the 1970s, for example, there was not much to speak about in terms of the quality of African football, but there are always great individual African players. For example, the greatest striker to come out of Europe in the 1960s was an African. Name was Eusebio. Eusebio was from Mozambique. Played for Portugal. Or the original Black Pearl. Top striker for Benfica. African player. So Africans have been coming onto the world scene as individual players. Because remember, the game is controlled by the Europeans. And they define who enters their game. So the football in Africa was really just what it is. Continental. Because we have to recognize that the center of world football now is in Europe. So there must be an effort to improve your football, to match the Europeans. And so the Africans drew for European coaches. They drew for European technology. In the same way the Europeans drew upon the Africans for their playing ability. So another type of interactivity now, interaction between Europeans and Africans. This time it's around football talent. The 70s, as I said, would produce a couple of individual brilliant African players. At the World Cup, there will still be no really great impact because the expansion to 24 was just a way to allow a few new teams to come in because the World Cup really started again at 16 at the knockout round. The first real impression by the Africans in football really showed up at the World Cup in 1990. And that's not even true because in 1982, let me not fall into the same trap to realize that Algeria was on the brink of getting into the final 8 when the Germans and the Austrians colluded to draw a match to get out the Africans. No, African football now, we cannot leave out countries like Morocco, Tunisia, Senegal. These are powerful African football nations. But perhaps because they are not Christian driven or because they are Islamic, we tend to want to ignore them. And because the Europeans tell us that they are above the Sahara, they are not black people. But these are African countries who have been knocking on the door, been participating in the World Cup for a number of years. Morocco has been there, Tunisia, Algeria. As I say, in 1982, Algeria was robbed of their place by a combination between the Germans and the Austrians, cousins. So African football has not really been so distant as the media would want you to appear. But in 1990, Roger Miller and the Cameroons made a very strong impression on the World Cup. Very strong impression. And it brought Africans to the consciousness that the World Cup is something to participate in. Not at the level of ownership of anything, just simply participating. People of the Caribbean also got a good vibrations when the Cameroons appeared on the World Cup stage. The Cameroons wore red, green and gold, Rastafari colors. The Cameroons had some Laxman in the team. So it created a vibration, psychological and spiritual vibration between African footballers and people of the Caribbean. Serious tradition of realizing that race is important within the concept of this football struggle. Because the battle is for supremacy. And the supremacy is not just about the nation, but ultimately it's about the race. And we cannot be naive to think that FIFA in its organization is not race conscious. FIFA was organized by all white men. It's all about power. It's about control. It's about controlling of resources. And the resourcing of the resource called play is a foundation resource. It's a fundamental resource. Play. Sounds simple, but it's a realistic approach to control. If you control how the people play, then you have a lot of control over their lives, because people, when they're not playing, they usually end up working. It's about work and play. So the movement of the African people in the 1990s, 1994, Senegal surfaced. The Nigerian team surfaced in 1994. The Super Eagles made a serious run. They were minutes away from a quarterfinal position when a little carelessness crept in and the opportunity was blown. The Nigerians are here again. They are here again in 2014. They have qualified for the final round of 16. It is no blip. And I'm going to make my insertion here now that as an African, I have to go with the Nigerians, I have to go with the Algerians. So France and Nigeria, major battle, dark horse, Nigeria. African nations that have been to the World Cup: Ghana, Ivory Coast, Algeria, Senegal, Morocco, Tunisia, Cameroon. Yet to find one of these nations to take it to the top. But in this World Cup, we have two serious horses. One called Algeria, one called Nigeria. And they are about to face two of the giants of European football, France and Germany. So it's Africa versus Europe. What a clash. Of course, the Europeans expect to win. But the Africans have been coming. And the Nigerians and the Algerians will not roll over and play dead. We understand, of course, that the football is about business. And FIFA has a serious interest in seeing certain teams advance because of gate receipts. Let us not lose the concept of money, because FIFA is all about money. Money is the power. So there are certain teams that must be at certain stages of the competition for the money to flow. And the officials and the gods of FIFA, they know that. So Africa has had its serious amount of difficulties. One thing is obvious within Africa and world football is that Africans have been able to dominate at the world international level, both the under 17 and the under 20 level. African nations like Ghana, Nigeria have defeated Brazil, defeated Argentina at the under 20 level. So there's a tremendous potential for world championship on the continent, but apparently there are some elements that are absent. One of the questions that arise is the nature of leadership. We're talking about leadership in football now. We're not talking about administrative leadership. We're talking about leadership at the playfield level. We're talking about the quality of coaching. And so there seems to be a problem in leadership at the level of international football. The question arises, can a European really take an African nation to the top of world football? Isn't that sort of conflicting at a certain level of ideology? And is it not appropriate and better that nations train their own coaches? So ultimately, no. It appears that for Africa to really produce a winning World Cup team, it has to reach a level where the coach is a member of that nation. Sound away, but that's the way it is. Because it has to be a complete effort. The foreign coach, particularly when it comes to African football, seems to have a problem when the team gets to the semi-final stage on those levels. I think we need to recognize that it's a war of race, it's a war of the nations. And you need to have your own people when you fight in a world war. Once you hire mercenary soldiers and the crisis come, they will not give you the 150%. So if you think about some of those things as to the shortcomings why African nations have been struggling to get to this top of the stage of world football. Metamorphosis in a different mode, kind of looking into how big ball roll and who gets the money when the ball roll, and what happens to those who own the venues and the marketing systems. What happened to them and them bag of money? You see, where one team was flown in $3 million in cash before the match play. There's a serious billion-dollar thing turning over at this thing called the World Cup. There are billions of dollars, and you wonder, how is it the world economy is so poor? Yet FIFA can generate all of this type of money. Seems as if we have some different worlds. The world of FIFA seems to be a different world than the world of governance of civic and political societies normally. Yes, this world of FIFA, the world according to FIFA is a different place. Because the men in FIFA, of course, cannot be challenged by the courts outside of FIFA. FIFA is a law unto itself. FIFA is only responsible to itself. So any activity that is not considered legal has to be dealt with inside FIFA. So the monies that are exchanged there and the various briberies and scandals we hear, nobody really goes to jail inside FIFA. It's just a simple tap on the wrist and you're sort of removed from your post. But life goes on in this international monster called FIFA. And you know, 1990 World Cup was an important journey within FIFA and the World Cup. It was also a new era in world history, because 1990 would usher in the era that we were going to call now globalization. And globalization is going to have a serious impact on the World Cup, like it had on everything else, and like it still does. Because what the whole idea of globalization was now is about a reordering of the world since the Soviet Union was pulled down. So there was no more USSR to fight against the USA. And so the fence came down, the wall of Berlin came down. And with that wall came the movement of a whole hordes of people coming through that wall to come into the West, inclusive of soccer players, all type of sportsmen and women. And these people would rush into the Western world and America. Now, football prior to that was in such a situation that players were not able to just simply move from club to club prior to 1990. But there's a Belgian player by the name of Jean-Marc Bosman, B-O-S-M-A-N. And Bosman was the man who would challenge the European Union and its laws about the movement of players. Because the clubs of Europe had controlled the players to an extent that they couldn't really move from club to club as they saw fit. They were being tied up by all sorts of legalities. What Jean-Marc Bosman did was to challenge the court system, that it was illegal to tie a player to the club until. Bosman won the case. It's a very famous case in Europe. It's called the Bosman case. And it set the precedent for the movement of talent right across the European Union, inclusive of football talent. So players now could go to any state in Europe and play. So you recognize the leagues in Europe, particularly the English league now, will be flooded by strange names as the European players from the East would come into the West. It also freed up the movement of African players. So there's a global movement now in sporting talent. And the world is not only trading in material things, the world is now trading in football talent. And the Africans are prominent, and the Caribbean people are going to try to make themselves prominent. The 1994 World Cup, this is the first World Cup that would have been played inside the United States. The United States, of course, is not a football power, but because of their political and economic strength, they were able to attract the World Cup to be played in America. America didn't even have a proper professional league at the time, but they had the money power. I must say something to you about now FIFA and America. Because America tried to challenge FIFA to change its rules to suit the American culture. What do I mean by that? The Americans try to persuade FIFA to expand the size of the goal. In other words, them tell them that they should make the goal wider. Because if the goals are wider, more goals would score. And that's what would attract the American audience. Because the American audience love big things. The culture talk about bigness, big toothpaste, big house, big this. Everything is big. So big scores. Basketball scored 160 to 150. NFL score 35 to 17. Baseball scored. They like large scores. So to them it wasn't attractive that a football match would end 0-0 and people will be excited. It wasn't attractive in America for a game to end 1-0 after 90 minutes. So the Americans tried to influence FIFA to expand the goals and FIFA just run them. The Americans tried to influence FIFA by introducing an offside line. This was a line that was drawn 35 yards from the goal. And this line would allow the strikers to hang out closer to the goal area than at the half line. And of course, the FIFA rejected that. The Americans tried to introduce 4 quarters into football the way they do it in basketball. Because the American culture is driven by, sporting culture is driven by advertisement. And if there are no breaks in the game, it's hard to run commercials. So football suffers in America because the game don't have so many breaks. But I'm just giving you these examples to show you the strength of FIFA. That FIFA is such a powerful organization that even the great United States could not have their way with this organization, this government, this world organization that is controlling the people's play.
One voice, you know, Slowdy. Yo, Lawless Event present the biggest water party to hit Portland. Marco Polo at Sunshine Beach on Saturday 28th of June. Featuring me, One Voice. I did down ya. Yo, Lawless, tell them, say, down there. Admission hour, 1,000 preschool, 1,500 at the gate. Ladies 2-4 at the gate before 6 p.m. Gate open 4 p.m. All drinks free. Music by Dermity, Mookie, Crown Prince, Bigger 5, and Flabba Dabba. Sponsored by Classic Cola, Digital Fruit, a cool running Grand Water, and Style FM. I'm on this thing, Portland. Yo, take with them, y'all. Marco Polo, go take with them, y'all. Take with them, y'all. Down there. One.
For the best quality in sound reinforcement and backlining, Native Audio. We have professional engineers with over 20 years of experience. So call us and we'll take care of your parties, wedding receptions, barbecues, conferences, and small stage shows. Crystal clear sound, Native Audio. Our prices are the best. Call us at 871-5212. That's 871-5212. Native Audio. We make your events audible. Planning a party? Club night out, stage show, a gospel concert, or even a business sales event? Let Styles FM be a part of your promoting tool. Take advantage of our low-priced promotion packages with commercials, interviews, giveaways, reviews, and much more. We have special offers when you mix and match and bundle your options. Contact us at 876-286-9216 or 439-5160. Styles FM for the most effective way to exploit your marketing dollar.
Architects, draftsmen, and surveyors, get your drawings printed in high-quality professional standards. We can satisfy your printing needs. Whether it is for presentation to your clients or for submitting building and subdivision application, make it VJ Printing Services. Whether drawing by hand or with computer-aided softwares, we will plot your negatives and print the copies as you need. We do high-quality white paper printing that is water-resistant and never fades, unlike traditional blueprint. For more information, call VJ Printing at 893-2266.
Styles FM, you're my number one.
if you're ready, make we do it for Jah.
Of course, the metamorphosis would not be the metamorphosis without the persons who are actually listening. So, of course, hail up Bongo John and the whole set of people in Breastworks. I want to hail up Makonnen. I want to hail up Osa, Jangai, and them in Central. I want to hail up the man them right above Size FM and the women up in Chatova and past the Gardens, Norwich Heights. Of course, the next end of the parish we go eastwards and we go into Drapers and up into eastern Portland, over to St. Thomas, Amy Bridge in there, Sewell up there in Hampton Court. And of course we can go right across into Kingston and St. Andrew and down the coast through St. Catherine. Hit up my bridge over there in Spanish Town. Hit up Empress MBU. Thank you for participating in the Metamorphosis on the last strong. Next program will find a little time to get into your notions of female leadership and the powers of the matriarchy. Vital insights. And then of course, people who are in the Caribbean who are locked into Styles FM, we give thanks for your participation, various islands. People in the continents, North America, east, west, north and south of that big place. Specifically the people in the Brooklyn and the Bronx and the Queens, and the California and the North Carolina and Atlanta and the Florida and the various states of America. All the states are the same. State of America. Over in the UK, we have the people in the United Kingdom and of course the people in Europe. On the African continent, the Ghanaians, the Kenyans, the South Africans who are listening to Metamorphosis. And down under, we have the people who are down under listening to us here on top of them. Right here in Jamrock, hail all people who are part of Styles FM and the Metamorphosis. All the listeners out in Harbour View, all my UE peeps. Rastafari University, meeting on Sunday to discuss things that are relevant. Yeah, going through still. I want to hear up also Empress Deal. Yes, is consistent in keeping eye alert. Yes, I. Of course, you up all essential workers, taxi drivers, firemen, nurses, whether here, there, or everywhere, night nurses, special one out there, hail up onto the eye, yes. And of course, to all the people who have aspirations to be liberated in their consciousness, we say keep the meditation going. Recognize that the brain is the Almighty and that God dwells within the consciousness of the eye. They were exploring the World Cup, this thing that has gripped the attention of the whole entire planet. And we want to know that while it's going on, it is in its final stages, critical stages, that we watch it now with a different perspective. We look at the advertisement that surrounds the play field. We look at the amount of commercials that are being on people in uniform and the amount of selling that is taking place here. Who are the buyers? Who are the consumers here? And who are really the manufacturers? Where do we fit in? Are we only consumers? Can we benefit from these things in the future by organizing our economic skills? A lot of things going on. This thing called the World Cup. It's about dominance. It's about superiority. It's about who has better organization and who has the luck of FIFA. Now, difficulties within African people and black people in football now surfaces at the level of leadership. Because our athleticism is evident. We are greatest runners in the world, fastest runners. But something becomes problematic when we organize in these large groups. It's a matter of leadership. And oftentimes, doubt surfaces And confidence can become eroded if you don't have trust in your own self. And sometimes we are conditioned to believe in the other. Now, I am of the view that it takes a complete national effort to bring in any World Cup. And it means organization from the grassroots to the very top. It also means a change in attitude from amateur to professional. And that has been a very difficult thing to come across. Because the World Cup is not about amateur play. The World Cup is about the greatest soldiers who fight for their nation over football. It might seem as though the effort of the Reggae Boys in 1998 was something that could be repeated just so. In other words, somebody fooled Jamaica that if you get to the World Cup once, you can simply get there again. Now, I've realized also that the World Cup is not only about how you play. It's about how you organize and how you spend your resources and how you train your youths. So 1994, the Nigerians made a run at the World Cup. Very good run. And inspired the Caribbean even greater. Even greater than 1994 was 1990, when Trinidad, our sister island, who has been more organized at football than Jamaica for the longest time, Trinidad made a run at the World Cup stage, and they missed getting on the stage by 1 point. That miss sort of galvanized and motivated Jamaica, who is a rival of Trinidad. And we thought that we would make a serious effort at the World Cup. Now, the World Cup is in a nutshell, is a recipe for national unity. I'll say that again. The World Cup, it is a recipe, in other words, qualification for the World Cup is a recipe for national unity. Qualification for the World Cup is a recipe for national unity, because it requires a unified nation to actually get onto that world stage. Nothing less. In 1998, for the first time in the history of Jamaica, the country was unified in the qualification bid. In that famous Road to France campaign, it is the first time that Jamaican people experience a togetherness, a removal of the tribal political divides, a coming together under one banner. One banner. That banner was called the Reggae Boys. And so the political tribal wars went to rest. The social discriminations went to rest. And for the first time, a fractured nation was temporarily healed by qualification for this World Cup. The World Cup at this moment brings together the top 32 nations. And again, it was Havilange who initiated the change from 24 to 32 in 1998. So we were fortunate that FIFA expanded its base from 24 to 32 World Cup teams. It was another attempt by Havilange to bring more third world nations into the World Cup, to make the game what you will call more democratic. And so Jamaica were poised to make a united run at qualifying for this World Cup. And the results are history.
Well, I say it's now divine majesty Emperor Haile Selassie. You know me say, King Elfin Queen Omega, modern father for iration. Sizzla Kalanje, Rastafari. You know.
So do black teams really need European coaches? Is that the formula? Is it that the black nations must have a European as a head coach? Is it that the Caribbean nations must have a foreigner as a head coach? We have to look carefully into this dilemma. So how does FIFA control this game that is worldwide? How can they stay in their offices in Europe and control the play of millions and billions of people across this planet? That's a serious level of organization. We have to explore how FIFA control the world. How do they govern international play? One of the things they're doing is create some rules and make the rules standard internationally. In other words, now football has developed some rules that are similar all parts of the world. In other words, the rules are standard. Laws have been created. As a matter of fact, they have created 17 laws within the game of international football. And these laws are standard right across the planet. So therefore, there's no difficulty then in applying. Maybe difficulty in interpretation, but it's all basically written to be the same. But how do they control the game itself? How do they control the resources that govern this aspect of our being? What FIFA does in realizing that over 200 countries are attached to their body, they have divided the world into 6 regions. Now, this is high organization now, you know. They have divided the world into 6 regions. They call them confederations. And they go by the name of Asia, Africa, Europe, South America, North America, Central America, and the Caribbean. That's one region. And they also have a region called Oceania. So, we can show you how organized these men are. They are going to take control of a resource that we're going to call play. Because it is play that we transform into organized games. And it is these games that we can transform into sports. But fundamentally, what FIFA is taking control of is the playing ability, the ability to play. And so, in Europe, Africa, Asia, Oceania, and our region called CONCACAF, FIFA has given these regions what you're going to call semi-autonomy. And these regions are basically responsible for their own activities. So FIFA doesn't try to interfere in activities of all nations. That is not practical. So they've divided to control. And each confederation now has its leadership And each nation has its own leadership, and it's all structured. So FIFA can stay in Switzerland, where their headquarters, and send out instructions, and they can impact the world through football. It's a high level of organization that I think could be assist an island like Jamaica, for example. Because we need to decentralize our governance. If FIFA can divide up the world and give regions semi-autonomy, why can't an island like Jamaica have confederations that have semi-autonomy? Yeah, we're talking about governance, where everything is not centralized in a place like Kingston. Everything is not centralized in Switzerland. We decentralize the power, and you give regions that have different political climate, different economic frameworks, different social makeup, give them a chance to apply things that are relevant in their confederation. So FIFA being a world government, we can draw from its structure and perhaps learn how to govern even our own affairs.
People to cast Babylon now. Instill malicious and grudge upon the people now. You see the dirty lifestyle, the Rasta man about it. There's nothing in them system of which they create all around. And they criticize their own children, yeah, they would catch at a straw if they were to drown. They're not different from those scribes and Pharisees who come around. Skylocks on the streets, flirts in the towns. They never do positive. They find a joy making people business around. Dance a yard before you dance abroad. The high priest tell you that I knew they frown. God and go get good ways through grace. If you perch we pass a young gate, you have to good ways. It give you long days. Now take no bribe from not a screw face. Go get good ways. Good grace, hurts me pass a young gate. You have some good ways to give you long days. What do you say? I tell you now, better wait your downfall. We gonna burn talk. Yo, what is that? Greater joy, I come miss on you a figure. I wanna catch a boat fill up. When Babylon City, I go down to Puganda where the spread becomes a dagger to them heart. Hey, them have a secret. The baby reveal it, so them a walk witchcraft out. So them better, so them a close in. Contempt the youth, them where they pass. Everyone is equal. Rastafari say, try not on the ungodly part. God and go get a good ways. Long days, birds be pass a young gate. What about your good ways? It give you length of days. Yo, know your taste, how you made it, they taste that. What? What's them now? I chat about them, this, them, that. Who's slick from who's black, aye. Them some ass Joe Bush. And anything else, when we come and must be rubbish and trash. Every day that them practice, this same thing they never yet know when to stop. Full up a bad mind. Then I want make you want to see your brother drunk. Go and have some good ways, true grace. First before you pass, I ain't get those and have some good ways. It give you long days. Now them chase out them medicine that taste. Good ways, long days. Now let go King Selassie, you no screw face. Good ways, it give you length of days. Now take no bribe from no screw face. Just have some good ways, it give you length of days. It's a
so rising higher, higher, there's magic everywhere. The expectation of a nation's like music to the air. We're singing a brand new song, marching to a brand new beat. Down the inside to the
this is what a World Cup does for you. It brings all elements of your country together. This song that we keep playing is our greatest memory of Jamaica's participation at the 1998 World Cup in France. That has to be the highest point of our sporting history within football. Of course, we are always at the Olympics reaping our medals. That has become a tradition now from the 50s. But the football is a whole different issue. It's a mass-based sport. It's the most popular sport in the world. It's the most widely watched game in the world. It is the world's biggest sport. So obviously, it puts a special feather in your cap whenever your nation can get to the World Cup stage. The World Cup in 1998, of course, brought out aspects of Jamaican culture. It raised issues of identity. It made people try to connect with this nation. That was the power of football. At the same time, at the individual level, I took myself into the university and started my own research. I have here in the library, in the studio here, for those who are able to see on the internet. This is my PhD thesis titled The Industrialization of Football. Industrialization of football. So it looks at international football, looks at the game regionally, looks at the game locally, and it's really an analysis in part of sport and resistance. And to look at the Reggae Boys as a model for transformation. Now, the Reggae Boys campaign definitely brought the nation together, and the World Cup became an important site because it's really a test. A test of your resources, physical, test of your psychological makeup, the test of all things under pressure and under duress. So we sort of created a history. We were very fortunate that we were helped along the way by other nations, which doesn't really happen in the World Cup. For example, Canada withdrew from the Gold Cup to allow Jamaica to participate, just to give us the experience. The forces came together at the right time, inclusive of Renee Simoes. And that effort was an effort from the top down, which is what Simoes spoke of. Simoes mentioned that this was the first place they had gone to build football from the top down. Now, if you build from the top down, it will only be a matter of time before there's going to be a collapse because there is no foundation. Now, saying that, the next World Cup in 2002, Jamaica, of course, organized themselves to qualify again and failed. The following World Cup in 2006, the Jamaican Federation went through the same motions, thinking that they can qualify every 4 years, and there was a total failure. In 2006, that was won by Italians. 2002, the Brazilians won for the 5th time. So Jamaica qualified in 98, and under some guise of being great, we thought we could qualify in 2002. We went through the motions, we failed to qualify. 2006, the same thing. 2010 in South Africa, the same result. Now, 2014, camp was wound up, same effort, same result. So it has been 4 World Cups since Jamaica has come close to qualifying for this world stage, which is suggesting that the national football has been in a sort of free fall. And you fall, and you're going to fall until you hit rock bottom. And I am left to wonder if rock bottom really was that 8-0 beating from France.
longer than the knife. And they can kill you once, but they can't kill you twice. Did you know destruction of the flesh is not the ending to life? Fear not of the Antichrist. Did you know that I exist before the earth? And did you know my eyes are windows to the world? Did you know you can't go as Zion and now wear Jerry girls? Can't tell the boys from the girls. Your body's just a vehicle transporting your soul. It's what's inside of people, this beauty to behold. Fear not of evil. Every day their flesh it grows. Changes of the times take a toll. And it was written up in the book of life. There's a man shall endure forever. And it was written up in the book of life. There's a man shall endure forever.
I want your name pure is in the eyes of the beholder, and love is in the presence of the love maker. Life is in the words of the comforter. Endure much longer, live much longer. Fear is in the eyes of the beholder, and love is in the presence of the love maker. Life is in the words of the comforter. Endure much longer, live much longer.
Around his chest and Rastafari is his name. A gift of everlasting life for us to all sustain.
Yeah, Metamorphosis, looking into this world organization, this world power called FIFA, International Federation for Football Associations. It's an organization that was orchestrated by the French, thus the name FIFA, the Fédération Internationale Football Association. So FIFA is the governing body of this great game and the biggest money-making event on the planet every 4 years. So 2002, Jamaica qualified in 1998, and the anticipation was high that we would be able to repeat. But what we're hearing now from the president of the Football Federation, who had the vision and the fortitude to lead us to that first World Cup, is that 12 years later, he's seeing the importance of having a football field in each confederation. This is 12 years later. Kind of belated, if we're going to speak about development. So in 2002, 2006, 2010, and what FIFA has done within those years was to fulfill a promise made by the president of FIFA, Sepp Blatter, who had replaced Avalanche. And the whole idea was, when would the World Cup reach to the continent of Africa? Because it was obvious that it was a European affair. It was a swapping affair between Europe and South America. They got brave and they took it into North America without America having any real pedigree for football. And so the politics of FIFA is to expand its audience and to increase its money. And there was a lot of hullabaloo about the safety of World Cup in South Africa and the threats to this and all sort of hyperbole before the tournament. And at the end of the tournament, Spain would win their first World Cup and FIFA would make the biggest billions ever in the history of the World Cup. So it's very important to recognize that it's all about making the billions. FIFA, however, does redistribute much of that money back into the confederations. And so that's why people who work for FIFA will never resign. They have to be forced out of it because the money is enough. It's plenty money flow from FIFA into some of these national governments, national football associations, not the government. And the money that FIFA sent to these associations cannot be questioned by anybody in the government. In other words, you can't question FIFA officials about the use of FIFA money. So if, for example, FIFA give the JFF $10 million, there's nobody in the country who can question how the federation would spend that money. Only FIFA. Serious power. Serious autonomy. World government. Biggest money. Yeah, it's the footballers.
Equal rights and justice for all. Rise and never fall. Tell them, say, what they gonna do when enough of them not true? Say, what they gonna do, them get slew, yeah. Who do you think you are? We're living in a small world. As wicked as you think you are, we're living in a small world. As bad as you think you are, we're living in a small world. As tough as you think you are, we're living in the one you know. Alright, that day will come when I shall stand and see all those wicked men in the fire getting burned. That day will come when they will try to escape and there will be nowhere to run. That day will come when I shall see they handing over bombs and bayonets and bullets and guns. That day will come when Emperor Selassie shall rise the wall of the ghetto youth and promote Islam, yeah. And the day I would love to see their face for all those people they do to the human race and try to take things out of place, run away to space, throw them in the air. If you want a judgment, you are gonna get the taste when them find out that them can't escape. Sadness they send on the people them trace. Smile on my face. That day will come when I shall stand and see all those wicked men and the fire getting burned. That day will come when they will try to escape and there will be nowhere to run. That day will come when I shall see they handing over bombs and bayonets and bullets and guns. That day will come when Emperor Selassie shall rise the one they get so youth them out of this slum. Who do you think you are? We're living in a small world. As wicked as you think you are, we're living in a small world. As slick as you think you are, we're living in a small world. As tough as you think you are, we're living in the one and name now. He tell them, escape today, you can't escape tomorrow. Make sure you pay back any kind of borrow. Make sure you don't left no life in a sorrow. Make sure you're not lean down straight like arrow. Make sure your brains not push out in a barrow. Make sure you make them go cold and borrow. Yeah, make sure your meditation and narrow. Judgment, I want to tell him something the world I want.
Metamorphosis continuing into balling mode, into the ball mode. And we're getting into a little bit of movement in the time as we're approaching final half an hour. So I have to speak now a little bit more to what is more current, like this 2014 World Cup that is now center stage. 2014 is here. And the nations across the world, in terms of their football, much has leveled off. It has leveled off because a lot of players from these other confederations are now playing in Europe. And because Europe is the center, the epicenter of world football, in terms of money and talent, gathered rather, all nations and their best players try to get into that financial mix. The Bundesliga, the German league, the Spanish league, the English league, the Italian league, the Dutch league, all these leagues are considered to be lucrative. And there was a time earlier when the Europeans would raid Africa for young players. When I say time, I don't mean they have stopped doing it. But it was very intense in the 70s. When they would raid Africa for their youngest talents and bring them across to Europe to play in second and third division clubs. What they call nurture them. And within 2 or 3 years, they would blossom onto the full stage of international club football. And so we begin to see a lot of African players showing up in clubs that at one time would never have a black player. A lot of the English Premier League teams like Liverpool and Chelsea, were known to be very racist and would never have a black player in their team. But because the black man is persistent and the talent is overwhelming, some of these teams have been forced to accept black players. Even at the national level, who could visualize Germany with black players in there? Germany for all the countries. This movement really started up in the early 70s, you know. Yes, with the movement of the talent and the Europeans realizing that the black man really were the ballers. It's really the man that had the rhythm and the style. So a lot of these nations will begin to recruit. And because of the power of FIFA now, you could change your identity within a couple of years. So your national identity can be changed. And you can no longer be what you were born with nationally. You can now become another nation. You can now represent another nation. FIFA gives you that power to change from being an Englishman into a Jamaican. FIFA says if your generation goes back to a certain amount of descendants, you can still claim to be a citizen of that country. So a rapid movement begins. A lot of black people now, Africans, are now playing for European clubs and representing European nations. Athletics and football. So the movement of the black man as a commodity continues. Because there are those who understand sports theory, and they will argue and tell you that international sports, professional sports, is really a means by which the power elite control the masses. It's a way in which the power elite rob the masses of their will to be creative. And it's a way to perpetuate a system that is controlled by the moneyed, powerful individuals and corporations. So we have to look carefully again into this whole money-making aspect of this football. Who is it that really profits? And is sport really being used to liberate black people, or is it used simply for financial gains from those who really control the plantation? So again, we are here in 2014, and the World Cup is on. It started out with 32 teams, and at this juncture, only 16 are left. Now, I always decided to make my intervention at the round of 16. Along the way, though, we have seen much drama in this World Cup. A lot of drama. We have seen teams that were not considered to be favorite advance into the second round, and we have seen some of the old guard fall away. For example, the defending champion Spain, the so-called founders of modern football, England, home, Italy, home, the Cameroons, home. So several of the teams and nations that used to be called the old guard have fallen away. And we see now the emergence of new nations who have been spending time organizing and preparing their football. So from 32, we're down to 16. And out of the 16 teams that are left, we have representation from all confederations except one. So one continent has gone home. There are no teams from Asia remaining in the World Cup. No teams from Asia are in the final 16. Now, 2 African teams out of 5 have made it to the round of 16. This is a great improvement for football in Africa. But what I noticed is that when the Asians go home, there is no great outcry about any weakness in the mentality of the South, of the Asians. There is no debasing conversations about their weaknesses. But when the Africans have to go home, you hear all kind of argument. Oh, black man can't do this, and the black man can't do that, and and black people can't do this. What about the Asians? But you see, we can't criticize the Asians because they have economic power and they have a military strength. So if they fail in their football, it's no big deal. But when the Africans fail in football, it's like murder. It's like we can crucify the Africans and find all kind of reasons why they have not succeeded. But you see, this time around, we have 2 teams. We have Nigeria and we have Algeria. 16 teams left. The Brazilians will play the Chileans. And I have to go with the home team, the Brazilians. FIFA need them to continue. I say 3-2. I think the Brazilians will score, so will the Chileans. I give the Brazilians a 3-2 edge. 1 goal difference. Colombia versus Uruguay. Uruguay has lost his bite. And Colombia should advance. The Netherlands versus the Mexicans. The Mexicans represent CONCACAF. I am a follower of Dutch football. I give the Dutch the edge. Costa Rica versus Greece. As a CONCACAF person, must go with Costa Rica. France versus Nigeria. Biggest upset. France going home. Cassidy shake him head. No. Cassidy can't believe I'm saying that. Big upset. Germany versus Algeria. Potentially another big upset. Argentina versus Switzerland. Got to go with Messi and his crew. And I'm looking at the United States to overpower the Belgians. So when the Metamorphosis meets again, there should be about 8 teams left. Teams that are playing now, they're playing to stay. Because once you lose, you go home. Instantly. The World Cup is on. The officials, we ask the question, who is mightier in FIFA than the referee? Not even God or Jesus can overpower the referees. FIFA is the Almighty. Who is mightier than FIFA at this moment? Who has more money than FIFA? Which government is bigger than FIFA? Who is FIFA? Metamorphosis.
Equal rights and justice for all. Rise and never fall. Tell themselves, boom, what they gonna do when enough of them not true. Say what they gonna do, them get slew, yeah. Who do you think you are? We're living in a small world. As wicked as you think you are, we're living in a small world. As bad as you think you are, we're living in a small world. As tough as you think you are, we're living in the one your name. Alright, that's the
I'm on inside the suit that tell me say Saudi Arabia man them have more money than FIFA. As a matter of fact, they are bid for the next World Cup 2018 and 2022, and they have the money to change it. They have enough money to move the World Cup from one season to the next season. It's all about money. But I still think that in terms of a government structure, there is no comparison to FIFA. They have the money, they have the power, and they have the clout. I want to know now, where is religion in this? Because at the World Cup, Allah is there, represented by Algeria. And the other countries who are Christian have them Jesus. What a battle on the football pitch. Is it a matter of good versus evil? Can we bring morality into football? Can there be morality when everything is about winning and money? Man, bite a man in them shoulder. And the last World Cup, man, buck a man in them chest. We hear that there are racist remarks being passed that bring in wrath out of the players. Where is God in this? Where is Jesus? Are they just spectators? And I think Satan must be having the best time. God, them don't have nothing to do but just watch as the drama unfolds. Who will win this world war?
That one that name now can tell them, escape today, you can't escape tomorrow. Make sure you pay back anytime you borrow. Make sure you don't left no life in a sorrow. Make sure you not lean down straight like arrow. Make sure your friends not push out in a barrow. Make sure no make them walk out and borrow. Yeah, make sure your meditation and narrow. Judgment, everyone tell them something the world I want. That day will come when I stand and see all those wicked men in the fire getting burned. That day will come when they will try to escape and there will be nowhere to run. That day will come when I shall see they handing over bombs and bayonets and bullets and gun. That day will come when
you are creators. Rise up, mighty people, accomplish what you will. Without confidence, you're twice defeated in the race of life.
light but bright, now we're plunging into darkness. We all have to play our part, make a bold start. Every distract, tell every artist. Media houses, we notice, tell them support the slackness. How so much alcohol in our parties. While the girls are broke out at this upper where she drink, knock her out. Now she no care with them crap her up. It's times like these, I'm missing our heroes. Times like these, I really wish they were around. Shouldn't have to be like this. Marcus Garvey, we know say you try your best, but we have to go do the rest. They grade up the shot at them, now we have a lot of them. Press up, back up, now the grave them a go back at them. Them broke the national bird wing. Sell we out clean, me not think we own a damn thing. Jam rock, why we giving in to the trick where them a trick.
Yes, D, I see your text. I see you full join the football discussion. It's part of the culture. It's part of our knowledge base. We have to understand what sport is all about. Because during emancipation, you know, the African people were turned loose. So we had to turn to our inner talents. Came out as entertainment for the slave owners. The talents are grounded in play. All cultural talents are driven by play. The musician plays instruments. The artist plays with music. The singer plays with notes. The actor plays acts. It's all about play, the foundation of our cultural activity. We have to harness it, harmonize it, and begin to develop our own economics now out of our own play. So play is not idleness, especially when you're surrounded with an economic philosophy. It becomes a developmental tool. And so we have to begin to look at this thing now beyond just being performers. How do we become the owners of production? How do we own stadiums? Yeah, not just running around in the stadium them. How do we own these places? That's an aspect we have to look into. So the World Cup is an eye-opener to billion-dollar industry. But as black people, we cannot just be consumers. We need to own some of these things. We need to bring the hemp into the industry that we can begin to make gears. And we can export gears. Yeah, man, we have to connect ourselves industrially to the world of football if we're going to be so prominent as players and performers. Yeah, Metamorphosis, looking at the World Cup in its final 16, moving down to final 8, 4, 2, then there will be only one. That one team will be crowned world champion. It's the only team sport that has a world champion. Serious events, lot of effort, lot of gambling, much gambling taking place. Even on this island now, you can gamble on each half. You can gamble on who going to score when. That gambling is taking over our culture to the extent wherein Sunday now is a normal day for gambling. And we have to realize also that professional sports and gambling are inseparable. It's the way of the world. Metamorphosis.
Do you know social living is the best? Do you know social living is the best? Do you know social living is the best?
Of course, healing up all the people in Buff Bay. Yes, give thanks that you are locked into the Metamorphosis. All of them, they know the story. And all the man in Another Bay who understand the football. And in Port Maria, right around the island, who love this thing. We have to understand its story, that we can make the most out of our talents. Organize from the grassroots right through to the Olympic level. That's where we need to go. World Cup will come after. A world effort, it's a world war. You have to be ready.
Do you know social living is the best? Do you know social living is the best? Do you know social living is the best? Live good to right, no fight, up time. Live good to right, no fight,
social living is the best. Do you know social living is the best? Do you know social living is the best?
Of course, the Rastafari University of Higher Life Learning still operating strongly online through the Facebook page. And of course, on Sunday, the end of month activity goes on at Lanzalon, 3 East Palm Avenue from 3 to 7. We'll be looking at some videos, debating and trying to finalize our points on the decriminalization of ganja as well as the industrialization of the hemp towards our economic liberation. And the World Cup is in the atmosphere, and we'll be looking at the chances of the Nigerians and the Algerians as they take on the European giants, France and West Germany. So it's Sunday. All the ones them who are part of the overstanding of importance of developing an institution, Rastafari University of Higher Life Learning is in its infancy, and hoping that those who are able to participate in our gatherings will tune in Sunday at Lanza. And next month, within the next 2 weeks, we'll announce our library event, our union with the JCDC, presenting our lecture series. So the ones who are in and around the area on Sunday, pass through Lanza Lawn, 3 to 5. Music, reasoning, Rastafari gathering.
When I and I should know that we are one. What time has come when I and I should know that we are one. We are one. We are one. Oh yes, we are one. What time has come when I and I should know that we are one. What time has come when I and I should know that we are one. We are one. We are one. We are one. Oh yes, we are one. Jah people.
Hey, Charles Hills, where I say, the Satan is in the grandstand watching the games while Jesus and Muhammad fight out on the field of play. Yes, that's all right.
We are one, Jah people. We are one. Oh yes, we are one. We are one.
Giving thanks to all my Facebook listeners, Facebook persons who are giving me some vibes as the program goes on. Give thanks to the people on the internet. Yes, you can see what's going on inside the Metamorphosis. And we hear those who are on the outside who are just simply listening, giving their energy as we try to transform ourselves from slave mentality to the mentality where we are actually masters of our own thoughts. Yes, an ultimate state to be in your self-reliance, when you can think on your own feet, confidently. Yeah. Yes, of course, I must hail up all the people out in East, West, South, Orange, Irvington, Newark, Bloomfield, Hillside, Glenridge, Montclair, New Jersey. Give thanks that you are locked into Metamorphosis. Splash Radio in New Jersey, 94.3 FM. Thank you for your link on the machine thing. What do you call it? The text line. And of course, people out there, Iman Blak, giving thanks for being able to be here at Styles FM again. My engineers, Cassidy and him Siren, get a beat next week. When we meet again, the French will have gone home. Him still a shake him head now. I'm persistent, you know, but you know, it's just an argument. And everything will resolve in the play field. And we give thanks to the Jacksons and their brilliant institution called Styles FM. Peace unto the item, prosperity in the homes and in relationship. I want to continue now discourse next period about the importance of matriarchy and the fact that the woman could actually be the leader in the family. And we have it all wrong. That the man them, maybe we have it wrong. Maybe we should just be simply supporting the leaders. Rastafari, Iman Blak, out.